All right, let's look at these problems real quick. Question number 2, fill in the blank. In a 30, 60, 90 triangle below, side S has a length of blank and the hypotenuse has a length of blank. So like I said, the first thing you want to do is label your pattern. So let me go ahead and get a pen. Across from the 30, he's x. Across from the 90 is 2x. And across from the 60 is the x radical 3. Okay. So notice they've given us one of the sides is 1. So we set that equal to our pattern so that x equals 1. That's our second step. Solve for x. Once we have x, then we plug x in to figure out the other sides. So if x is 1, then 2 times 1, my hypotenuse is going to be 2. Then I can plug x in over here. 1 times radical 3 is just 1 radical 3. So those are my two answers. The S is the 1 radical 3, which is D, and the hypotenuse is 2. Okay. On this question, it says, which of the following could be the ratio of the length of the longer leg to the length of the hypotenuse, and check all that applies. So in our 30, 60, 90, the longer leg is the one that's across from the 60. So this is 60. That makes this guy the longer leg, x radical 3. Across from the 90 is the 2x, and across from the 30 is the x. Label your pattern. Now if I want to check these ratios, notice it said that the longer leg is first and the hypotenuse is second. Well, right away I know that the longer leg and the hypotenuse cannot be the exact same because one is 2x and one is x radical 3, so I know it can't be A. But let's see if it could be B. Let's see if it could be 1 radical 3. Well, if this guy is 1, then I need to check to see what x is. So we have to solve for x. In order to get x by himself, do you see how x is being multiplied by radical 3? So we need to divide by radical 3 on both sides. Cancels. We divide this side by radical 3. So x equals 1 divided by radical 3. And what we talked about in our video is we can't leave a radical on the bottom of the denominator. So we have to rationalize it. So we multiply by radical 3 over itself. And what that does is radical 3 times radical 3 is just 3 on the bottom of your fraction. And on the top is 1 times radical 3, which is 1 radical 3. So now I've solved for x. X is 1 radical 3 over 3. I know that's ugly, but that's what it is. So if I wanted to find 2x, then I would just take the 1 radical 3 over 3, and I would multiply it by 2. And that would give me 2 radical 3s over 3. So this guy is your hypotenuse, and this one was your long leg. Does it match up with answer B? No. So it's not B. I'm going to erase that work so we can have some more space to try the next one. Alright, so we've got another 30, 60, 90. Sorry, my triangles aren't very pretty. Across from the 60 is the x radical 3. Across from the 90 is the 2x. And across from the 30 is the x. Now this time it's telling me my long leg is radical 3. And my hypotenuse is 2. So if this side is radical 3, then to solve for x, we would divide by radical 3 on both sides. It cancels. We divide by radical 3 on this side. Radical 3 divided by radical 3 is just 1. That's why it cancels over here, but if I was going to divide it here, it would just be 1. So that means that this x side is 1, and the 2x side is 2 times 1, which is 2. That's why C is a good option, because a long leg is radical 3 and the hypotenuse is 2. Let's look at D. Start by labeling our sides just like we've been doing. Across from the 60 is the x radical 3. Across from the 90 is the 2x, and across from the 30 is the x. Now it tells us that the long leg is 3 radical 3. So let's start by solving for x. Remember, in order to get x by himself, he's being multiplied by radical 3, so we need to divide by radical 3. Cancels. Divide by radical 3 on this side. Do you see how there's radical 3 over radical 3? That's when it cancels as well. So our x just equals 3. Now that we've got x, we can plug him into the other sides. This side would be 3, and this side would be 2 times 3, which is 6. That's why D is a great option. Now I know this is a lot of work, but this is the best way to go about making sure you catch every possible option. And you caught those two, great job. Just this last one you missed, so I'm going to show you why it's true. So across from the 60 is radical 3, x radical 3. Across from the 90 is 2x, and across from the 30 is the x. So this time it tells me my long leg is 3. So this one equals 3. And I have to solve for x. So we're dividing by radical 3. It cancels. And we divide this side by radical 3. Notice there's no radical on top here to cancel with the radical on bottom. So that's why it doesn't just get to cross out, which would be nice. So this is an example of rationalizing the denominator again. We have to get that radical out of the bottom. We multiply by the radical over itself, and we multiply across. 3 times radical 3 is 3 radical 3. Radical 3 times radical 3 is just 3. 3 divided by 3 simplifies to 1. So in the end, your answer is 1 radical 3. Notice that's what we solved for x. So x is 1 radical 3. So this guy right here, he's 1 radical 3. Well, if I wanted to find the hypotenuse, then I would take it and I would times it by 2. 2 times 1 radical 3. When you're multiplying like this, you want to multiply the numbers that are outside the radical, and they stay outside the radical. So you get 2 radical 3 as that hypotenuse. Okay. This last question is very similar to the other questions that we've been looking at. It says, which of the following could be the ratio between the lengths of the two legs of the 30, 60, 90 triangle? Okay. So two legs mean the 30 and this across from the 30 and across from the 60. I call that short leg and long leg. Okay. So across from the 60 we know is the x radical 3. Across from the 30 he's just the x. Now could they be exactly the same? They actually can't be exactly the same because one is x and one is x radical 3. If you were looking at a 45, 45, 90, that would definitely be the same because both of those side lengths are x's and x's. They would be the exact same. But when you have two different ones like x and x radical 3, they can't be the same. So the next option is 1 and radical 3. So let's say that x is 1. Well, my next step would be solve for x, and I just did that. X is 1. Then I can plug x in right here. That would make this side 1 radical 3. So that would be a great option for our ratios. But let's say we want to try C. I'm going to erase what we got going on. This guy was x, this one was x radical 3. All right, so we have to figure out which one of these guys we would set for the x. So what I would do is see which one of those is smaller. Is the square root of 3 smaller in number, or is the 2 smaller in number? Well, radical 3 is 1.7. So that means that the radical 3 is going to be the smaller side. So I set that x equal to the smaller one. Because notice, this side is smaller than that side. So that's why I choose the smallest number to go with the x. So if x is radical 3, then I plug radical 3 right in here. And we multiply. What's radical 3 times radical 3? Well, it's the square root of 9, which simplifies to just 3. So the ratio would be radical 3 to 3. So that's why this one's wrong. It's because it says radical 3 to 2. D is going to be wrong because I know they can't be the exact same. If x is 1, would the other side be radical 2? I know that's not going to be right because the other side would be radical 3, x radical 3. So it's not going to be E. And then the last one says radical 2, radical 3. Well, the square root of 2 is 1.4, so that's your small side. So we would set this one equal to the radical 2. And if x equals radical 2, then I plug him in right here, radical 2. And I see, what is this long side going to be? Well, radical 2 times radical 3 is radical 6. And it doesn't simplify down, so this would be your answer. Radical 2, radical 6. That's not what F says, so F is not a correct answer. Hopefully that'll help you out with some 30, 60, 90 rules. Again, these are really important and they're coming back in geometry a lot, so you want to make sure that you are ready. Okay?